Greetings, Gremlins! Today we're going to show you how to make an animated emote on Clip Studio Paint. I'll be using my Melm Melm emote as an example for today, but this process can be applied to all sorts of animations. If you do want to try your hand at following alongside me, or you've missed my latest batch of Mlems and want to try your hand at making your own, you can find this base file on my Ko-Fi or Etsy. Just be sure to read the TOS beforehand, and let's get started. Alright. Just to make sure that we are on the same page with this, I am using Clip Studio Paint, which this step-by-step process can be applied to different programs, but you will be using different tools if you are not using Clip Studio Paint. I'll provide all of the necessary information down to what tools, what kind of layers, and what kind of methods we'll be using throughout this video, so don't worry about those details quite yet. We will cover them together. So before we get into our tutorial on how to layer everything and get started on the actual animation, I'm going to do a brief breakdown of the base here. You can use this as well with anything that you're making on your animation file, and we'll get started there. To get us started, let's go and look at the animation settings that I have. So under animation on Clip Studio, you can go to your timeline and you can go to change frame rate if you're not already on a canvas. So right now we're on 30 frames per second. You can put your animation to any frame rate that works for your animation. There's not a lot of set rules there, but the more frames you have, the more detailed you can make your animation. But frame rate will affect speed mostly. So you will want to test that out and see what's the happy medium for you or what you like your workspace to be. You can also look up different frame rates that are used industry-wise that would help you get into the motion of your animation. For example, 15 frames per second and 60 frames per second are used a lot. If you are just starting a new animation, you'll want to hit the New button. You'll want to go to Animation, and you can set up your file in here. This is the file size that I have at the moment. It is 5 inches by 5 inches. I like to work in inches. You can work in pixels, especially if you're working with a certain size of file that you need for, let's say, example, Twitch or YouTube uploads, Discord especially as well. You'll want to make sure you look up the size of the file first before starting your artwork. You can resize it later, but it might have consequences, so make sure that you have that set. The same can be said for resolution as well. Next, I want to go into our tools. So today we're going to be using some specific brushes, mostly just a textured brush that is my personal favorite called the Design Pencil. I have my own personal settings here that you are right to copy as well. I use that for drawing most of my work, actually. I'm a little addicted to this pen. And the next one that we'll be using primarily today is Liquify. What Liquify does is it essentially moves your line work and colors just solely by the pen's outline. And you can drag it with however strength that you'd like to set Liquify to. This is the strength I like to use is 20 or 21, and the hardness is at 50. But you can play around with that as well to your liking. I just know that the harder the pressure is, the more movement you're gonna see. So if you want a small deviation, you really don't want to set it too high. Again, I will be including all the file links for those pens in the description. I may also list them on screen as well if I've had the time to do that. And let's just jump into the layer by layer process at this point. For animation, I usually go with hand-drawn frame by frame, but in this case, we're going to simplify this and also make additional layers. So we're not going to have everything on the same layer. We are actually working on multiple different pieces to make the movement look fluid while also giving us the cute, bouncy, squashy look that we're looking for. We will be doing a frame by frame animation as well when we get to our tail, but we will wait until afterwards to go through that. The first thing we'll note here is that everything is separate. I have the cat ears separate and the art color as well. You want to keep those separate because you want to make sure that you can change those without issue later on, because if you don't separate them, it might make a lot more work for yourself. The next layer would be the eye shines, the eye color, which the eye color you'll notice has a base. So it has a base of 3 frames that are clipped with the actual eye color. So a clipping layer means that whatever layer it's clipped to, it's only going to be shown where there's actual paint. So this is the icon you would need on Clip Studio. So clip to layer below. If I turn that off, it's just a big blotch of color. And you don't really want that, but if you do. Moving on to the body line. This is usually the layer that I put the clothes and the front bangs on, depending on what kind of character I'm working with. So both the main line body and the body color are together on this area. And the tail line has 8 frames included. So we have an 8-frame tail going back and forth. And the color is separate as a base color. The reason I have a clipping layer here instead of a clipping group is because a lot of the time when it comes to characters, it's gonna have one color for the tail, or if it's a simple tail, it will only have one color. And you can change this for yourself, or you can apply this to any other movement that you're working with. But in cases where it's more detailed, you don't want to have one singular frame covering all of this. For example, we'll just do this really quick, a pink tail. Now you have a pink tail and it's completely pink on every frame. But if you want more detail, I would definitely suggest not using this base there. But what you can do, let me just do this real quick for you, is you can press New Animation Folder. What you do with this folder is you will clip that. It's already clipped because I made a new one between this one layer here. And you can match the frame rate. And Clip Studio has a beautiful option where you can select all the frames. You can simply copy them, and then you can paste them here. It will not paste the drawings, but you'll have the frame pattern. And to add more frames into there, the quickest way I like to use is by just hitting New Animation Cell. And you'll notice if you stay right here and you click it again, it's just gonna make 1A. Instead, what you'll wanna do is bring your mouse over here. You can create a new layer within the folder and it will fill the other cells automatically. Save yourself the headache and just do it that way. If you ever do need to, let's say for example, you want to copy and paste a layer, let's go back again. I'm going to, for example, I'm just going to paint bucket this at the moment, just for today. I have to get rid of the top layer so you can see it. Let's see. So let's say this is perfect. I'm just gonna move it slightly and put it as frame 2. You can click on the frame, make sure that that red line is there. You can hit Control C and Control V on 2, and it will populate that area automatically. If you need to do it again, however, I would just suggest copying number 2. If you keep going with just number 1, you'll see again, you'll have like 1A or 2A and so on. So if you want to do it in sequence, that would be best because that's what Clip Studio will use instead. All right, I think we're ready for the next part, so just give me a second here. I might go into a bit of a speed paint because we're just gonna make a new Melm Melm and then I'll show you how to animate it. When you're getting prepared to actually animate your Melm Melm, my suggestion, at least for my side here, because this is how I do it with my base, I duplicate the base. And then the original down here, I bring that down with its opacity to at least 20 or so. You'll notice that you'll see it in the background here, and you'll see it throughout the video as well as we go while making this new one, but this will act as our guideline. You'll see why in a few moments. It's mostly just deleting the previous frames because we are essentially starting from scratch with just the first frame to get us going. Let's prep this layer for this action. For my cat ears, I don't really need these ones, so we're going to get rid of them. The tail does work for my character, but for the sake of just going through the tutorial, we'll get rid of it so we can work on that together. I'm going to get rid of frame 3 and 2. Actually, this is the eye color, so we're gonna go with the body line and get rid of those frames. My bad, I hit the wrong one. All right, we're gonna do this on every layer except for the eye shine, eye color copy, and eye color base. And then the body color can just be completely deleted for now. We have everything still on our timeline that does not affect the frame patterns. So 1, 2, 1, 3 is our pattern, and it will stay that way the whole time. The easiest way when you're making new layers is just to copy and paste like we were before. Just make sure everything's highlighted when you do so. All right. Now that we're prepped, I think I will take this time to do a quick speed paint for you to get these layers started. And just a quick note, don't forget your references. Those are important. They will help you on your journey in animation and with just illustration in general. Never be ashamed of having a reference, and just remember that learning is okay. We're taking a quick break here just to show you how to copy and paste things into a frame cell without having any issues. You can't directly combine two layers within the animation folders. So, for example, right now I just want to bring this ear and duplicate it for the other side at this point. So I'm going to select my ear layer, I'm going to copy it and close the frame. The folder itself has it selected still, so you want to select outside the folder because when you hit Control V while it's only highlighted on the folder, it will paste inside the folder. So you'll want to hit over here so the entirety of it is fully selected, and press Control V. Now you have a separate layer with your object, whichever you are duplicating or editing, and what you can do is you can paste it twice, and just like in any illustration, you can go ahead and edit this and move it around wherever you need it, adjust it as such, and then merge those two layers. Now you have them on the same layer here. You'll want to change this layer name to 1 once again, because you're going to copy this layer. You can delete it now, and then you can delete the frame that was in the folder and paste your new one. This is just one of the quick tips that I learned in the process of making a ton of my Melm Melms over time, so I hope that does help you, and of course we'll be getting back into details shortly after we're done the first frame of the animation. I'll see you right then. All right, now that we have all of our base frame 1 line art pieces done, we're gonna go ahead and finish up the frame by frame. So the only 2 layers other than the tail, which we're gonna do separate, that has frame by frame included is the body, which has the tongue in the bowl, and in my case, the ears, because my ears' tails move. So those will have to be animated separately, and we'll just quickly do that right now. All right, now that we have the line art layers done, we're gonna go ahead and tackle the frame by frame that is part of the layers. So for example, our frame by frame is included in the baseline. So the body itself has the moments where the tongue is going in and out of the bowl and the ripples are changing as well. So we're gonna fix that, and character specific, my character has these tails on my ears, so they move as well with any movement of my model. So we are going to animate those separately as well. First, what we're gonna do is do a step-by-step on the base, however. So we have only frame 1 here because we started from scratch. And with our opacity base down here that we kept, we're gonna use that as a guideline for the tongue and the water ripples. So go ahead and on your layer, you're going to get rid of the tongue, and you're gonna get rid of the ripples. Now the first thing you want to do when you get rid of these details is you're going to want to draw in the tongue, and then you're going to want to add any details that isn't visible while the tongue is out in. You see that we are leaving the ripples out at the moment, and that has a purpose. So we're going to copy layer 2 and make it layer 3 now. The reason being is because the ripples change between these 2 layers, but the tongue does not, along with anything else that is being included by our frame by frame animation. So we're going to go in and add those details on their respective layers at this time. You don't have to follow the ripples exactly, but the motion is there. And now, since we have the body now, you'll see it's still not moving in a squash and stretch, but we will be getting to that next. That only gets done once the line color and the base color are all done. So we're gonna go and move to our ears now, since they have frame by frame. And you don't wanna move them by much. This is a very light animation. There's only 3 frames. So if you move them by a lot, that's gonna cause some issues. Okay. So we're going to get rid of this. And just like before, I'm actually going to delete my layer 3 that I just created. Because what we can do is we can get rid of those lines there. And to keep things consistent, when we're at this stage without the tails on the ears, we're gonna copy and paste that so we have it for later. Now let's get into onion layers. This will help you a little bit. So what onion layers do, you'll see right here, this is for onion skin. You'll wanna remember that for later. It is just so you can see what is on the other frame that's before and after it. In our case, layer 1 surrounds all of our other layers, so we're only going to see the reflection of layer 1 on our canvas. If the layers were sectioned by 1, 2, and 3, you would see layer 3 in blue and layer 1 in green for your onion skins. All right, the small movement we'll do here will be to slightly change this animation. And I'm going to stick to one side only for this, just for a little bit. I'm kind of applying a squash and stretch of its own. It doesn't have to be perfect, especially when you're testing things out. And you see, that does not look good. That's why when it comes to very small changes, you definitely don't want to put a ton of movement in there. This would be different if I had a lot more room for animation. If I had a lot of frames, then I could probably get away with just making the motion a lot more fluid. It's a tail wag in itself for these, but for now we're just gonna make small adjustments. So I'm gonna squish this in a bit more. And then I'm going to squish it out. In a more lighter sense now. And yes, it will look a little bit janky still. It is very quick, but when we're nearing the end of our animation, it should look much nicer, much neater as well. You can also go back on your frames and work on it as you like. It is very hit and miss in animation. You have to go back a ton most of the time. Until you get it completely right, do not be afraid to go back to your other layers and redo things. It's important that you redo things. I'm going to go back into a quick time lapse so I can get this done for us, but when I come back, we're going to be moving on to color. We're going to do the first layer of each of our frames first. We'll have a full piece on our hands, and then I'll show you how to animate it. So I'll see you then. Another tip right quick is if you go to Window and Canvas and you hit New Window, you could also make a window for the current canvas that you're on, which I made the mistake of being on the canvas for the reference there, but hit New Window, and then you'll have your artwork right here so you can reference it. Or just another part of your drawing, just like I will for today. Alright, so now that we're back, I have the color and the line work done. Now we're gonna go in and use some clipping folders, so some animation folder clipping, to the line art, so that we can color the lines to kind of make it more diverse and also bring out some other details. And once we're done that, we will get to the animation part. Alrighty, so everything is done now, including the line art color. You'll notice I put a blush on my line art as well. That's just for personal preference, but that is something you can do as well if you'd like to. So let's see here. Our next step is going to be making sure all layers are completed. So in this case, what that's going to mean is we're going to make sure that all of these frame pockets here, where there's 3 frames that are needed, are going to be filled. We have to do it individually for anything with extra animation, like the tongue and the ear tails. And I believe there's some other details we'll be getting into in just a moment as well. But first, let's get that done for you guys. Okay, so first, we're going to go ahead and make sure that our tongue layer here goes exactly the way that we did with the line art. So what I'm gonna do first is make sure that the tongue color does not interfere with the layer itself. Unlike before, we don't have to worry about the ripples anymore. If there's anything we'd have to worry about with the ripples, it's the line color. In this case, the base color, they don't have a base color other than the milk that's here. Which luckily the milk is not going anywhere, so that is great for us. My character does have a detail on her neck, but this is not a piece where the neck is really shown other than probably the bottom part, which is why I have the bottom of the necklace peeking out. And with that, you'll notice you don't actually have to redo it for the third frame. Now we just have a nice tongue sticking out. Pardon the flashing. That is going to happen as well. So if you do have some issues with flashing lights, I would really be careful when working with animation, especially if you're not done all your layers yet, because that could cause issues and you need to stay happy and healthy. So just keep that in mind. All right. So the only other ones that we need to worry about for complexity is the ears. So we're gonna do the same thing with the ears as we did last time. I'm gonna show you how I color in the sections because I know you guys were watching through the speed paint for a while and didn't get to see that bit. So usually when coloring in the line art, a quick tip that I like to do is I will go to the line art layer and choose the corresponding number, which is 2 in this case. We're gonna use our auto select. We're gonna click outside of our figure, and we are gonna use this option to invert the selection. Right now, because I copied and pasted the coloring from the other layer, you're going to go ahead and hit this button, which is deleting the outside selection. Oh, that's right. Hold on just a moment. You don't want to do what I just did there, which was a mistake. I'm still on the line art. You don't want to delete the line art, so I took that off of there. I backspaced. Go back to your color layer. Make sure you're on your color layer. You're going to hit delete outside selection. And then you can go ahead and just color in whatever's missing. Just fix it up to your liking, and you can move on to the next step. You can use layer 2 as a copy and paste for layer 3 and just follow the steps again. So we're going for the line art again. Yes. We are inverting the selection. We're moving back to the color. We are deleting the outside selection and just coloring in what needs to be filled. And you're done. Now you have every layer colored in. And now we get to start with our next bit. Our Holge is still flashing around. So we definitely need to go ahead and fix that. All right. Go into your Holge. Copy each layer until they are filled. Control V, Control V. And then you have your layer on every single frame. All right, now comes the fun part. This can be tricky, so you're gonna wanna pay attention. Let me go ahead and delete these references. Thank you, references. Always thank the references. Save your file, first of all. And now we're gonna go ahead and get to the squash and stretch. Okay. Now I want you to note that it's going to be very important that you have every layer that you want to squash selected. You can go ahead and do them individually as well, which you are going to want some variety, so I would recommend doing so. Now the reason I didn't get rid of the eye color base is because I use that as a guideline to how far I should squish. You can change that if you'd like by selecting the eye color base in the same method that we're going to use for today. But for the sake of just learning, we're going to keep it as is for now and just have it the default squish and stretch that I had from before. This time, I think I'm going to include the ahoge and the main body base at the same rate of squash and stretch. So we're leaving layer 1. Layer 1 is our first frame and does not need to be moved. It's perfect the way that it is. Layer 2 is our stretch. We're going to select the ahoge at level 2. Select the line art and color. Go to body. This is my line art color for the body line. I'm selecting cell 2 for the line art and the color. With all of those selected, this is when we get to the fun part. We're going to go to our liquid tool or liquefy tool, and we're just going to start pushing in the sides. I'm going to bring the layers over to the side a bit so we can see a little bit better. And we're going to squash this side. And again, I know exactly where I want it to be because I want the inner side of the eye to match up to the rim there. And then the stretch means I'm going to have to bring it up this way. Okay, and now we have the squash layer. So we're gonna go ahead and select these. And we're gonna squash the head a little bit. And we are gonna bring out the sides as well. Perfect. Now that we have those figured out, we do in fact need to go ahead and do some subtle movements to the rest of the drawing to make sure that the squash and stretch really sells. So, give me one moment here and I will do that. Alright, now we're gonna go ahead and make our other movements. We're going to start with just the base, so just the body in this case. We're gonna select the line art here. You can select any of the layers that are included with the body base. Just make sure that one of them is the main selection, like so. And then hit the little box next to the eye to select the others, just like before. Alright, so because our movement is going up on layer 2, the force of going upwards would move anything that's got some physics downwards. So we call this drag in animation. So every movement has a drag with anything that has specific physics, like fluffy hair or anything light would be dragged along with the movement. So since we're going up, the drag goes down. So anything like hair, clothing is going downwards. Now we're going to select layer 3. And now we're going to be bringing everything up because the drag is going up now since the character is going down. So we just drag everything upwards. And the end result for just the base at this moment should look like that. I got some fluffy little hairs moving around. It makes it look really cute. Alright. Since the ahoge is at the top there, we're going to work on this as well, but there is a little bit of a different movement here. Still going to be dragging down for the ahoge, but we also don't want to move its base point. We want to squash it, in this case, while also bringing the movement downward. And when it comes to the squash frame, we want to lengthen it in this case. We want to stretch and bring this upward, resulting in something like this. Very bouncy, very cute. All right. So our next step is going to go ahead and apply these features to the other parts of the drawings. So I'm going to go ahead and go to our ears. For the ears, it's the exact same principle. You're going to stretch first, though. stretch. But unlike everything else, it's gonna look a little bit different. With ears and tails and such, they're a little bit more exaggerated. You can also tone these sorts of movements down if that's what you prefer. So we stretched upwards before making the movement or the drag go downwards. So we go to the squish frame now. We are still gonna squish. Squish. It's best to think of it as a ball. And then you're going to have the drag point these ears up even further than before. Movement's good, but also make sure you don't hyperfixate? Hyperextend? Hyperextend those puppies. Don't hyperextend those puppies. And now you have some cute little ears moving back and forth. You can adjust these to how you like as well. I think in this case, I want to also move the tails a little bit. I'm gonna have them bring themselves up and also squish themselves down. A little bit more movement can also go a long way. Now, regularly, when there is a huge difference between the actual width of this part here, I would fix it. However, if you've noticed, we've given ourselves a bit of bleed room here. This blue box in our canvas is actually just the border of the final render. So anything outside the render is not going to be seen. That's why I didn't draw my character's stockings or anything, because only what's within the box will be seen by the camera. There are also different spaces that you can adjust with this. You can also animate without it, but I do recommend that you have a bit of a safety box there. It's just really nice for when you're working with animation and you want to be able to keep everything consistent. If you have to imagine what's outside of the rim of the box, it makes things a bit more difficult. All right. So we're looking pretty cute so far. We're gonna move over to our back of the hair. All right. So when we do the back of the hair, it's not usually the opposite, but you can also do it like you could flip the squash and the stretch so that you can have opposing animations. However, in this case, I like to just over-exaggerate it when it's just the back of the hair. So in this case, we're just going to stick with the regular squash and stretch. But we're gonna really exaggerate the lower bit of the hair, really bring it in. We're also gonna make our little wing cuts go down quite a bit as well. Some animators prefer subtle movements and some animators prefer very, very high movement. Just remember that it's all up to your preference. We bring out the bottom here and bring up the wings. Cute. Okay, we're gonna move on to the tail. Luckily, in our case, it's really easy to just go through the tail because the base actually matches my character, but we're gonna make it a bit more difficult today for myself, just because I want to show you guys how you can customize your tail just by using the base itself. You can keep your character on screen, just have them lowered in opacity so you can see the base behind. You want 8 frames. My recommendation on making them fast is just to create a new frame cell here, go to layer 5 and hit the new cell multiple times until you reach 8 of them. This of course won't be the same on every canvas depending on your project, but for this one, it works because we're working on 2s. Alright, so the tail starts down here. I'm gonna make sure my line art is consistent and keep it on a level 8. And then I have a very fluffy tail for my character. So while it's in the box, I'm gonna make sure it's very fluffy looking. But as soon as it hits the outside, you don't quite have to worry about it anymore. You can keep those details in there if you would like. However, it doesn't have to be essentially perfect. If you try to make it completely perfect all the time, you may not like the process as much. However, to each their own, and you can put whatever level of effort to the outside box as you'd like. For today, I am just going to leave that as a bit of a squiggle whenever it hits the outline box, just to where I need it. And to your liking, if you have a problem with the layer, kind of like how I do with this one, you can always go back and redraw it. So this part of the animation is straightforward animation. You do have a base in this case, however, this is just all hand-drawn. You won't have much squish and stretch, but you can still apply it to these layers if you need them for later. Just remember that the movement here is what's important. Since it is a tail wag, it does need to be consistent in its movement. And you can change the timing as well by squishing the frames a little bit closer together. Let's say, for example, if you really wanted it to slow down near this side, you would draw these frames much closer together instead of equally apart like I have done. That might be a video for another time, but for now I think that will suffice. Alright, let's put some color on this tail. Mine is a bit more simplistic, so we don't need a ton of detail on it. I'm going to show you my next tip here. Now when it comes to coloring in frame by frame, there is a little tip and trick to kind of help you along here. For example, this is my line art for the tail. I'm going to hit the set as reference layer. Now I'm going to go to my bucket tool, and when you have your options down here, this is refer to multiple layers, and you can actually turn it on to the lighthouse. And since it's on the reference layers now, I can go ahead and grab the color, which is the same as the ears, so I'm going to quickly go sample that. You can just go to your color base layers and fill them in as such. Super easy, and it saves you a ton of time. This also works with the auto select tool. So if you go ahead and select it like this and invert the selection, you can also use this method. Technically, I would prefer that method rather than just using the bucket tool, just because I believe it puts a bit more detail into covering the line art underneath. However, that is personal preference, and you guys can use that tool however you'd like. So whichever way you prefer, essentially. And my tail only has a red tip. So like before in the beginning of the video, how I mentioned that you could use either a group for your animation or just a single layer to color simplistic tails. In this case, mine would be the example for the simplistic tail. So what I like to do is I will just color the outside. And this is like magic. I'm gonna turn this down a little bit because it's not that vibrant. I'm gonna turn off onion layers so we can see this properly. But you're gonna place your tail layers you're going to select them all, go into your animation folder, and you can put them at the bottom. And there you go. So because just the tip of my tail is red, having a arc cover it actually helps in just making the process a lot faster. And once it's cropped for the portrait that I have here, the little blue box, it's actually not noticeable that it's not exactly on the tip because the tip's not always showing, but it does sell the actual effect. I do want to turn it down a little bit more just because it is much closer to the top than usual. So I'm just going to do this a little bit. It's a lot more subtle. All right. So I think that covers the basics there. Next, we're going to get into the final touches that I like to do. And you can use these next tools however you like, and for any animation you like as well. But we'll maybe make another video covering a lot more, especially if you guys have questions. So let me know down below what you'd like to look at for Clip Studio. All right, so starting with our animation, what I like to do is first we'll make a colored background. Clip Studio, unfortunately, by default, does not allow you to export GIFs as a transparent GIF. So I will be teaching you later on how to actually do that. My layers here are just loading at the moment, but you're gonna take your finished base. I'm gonna make a new group. So this is a new folder here. I'm gonna drag this into the folder and duplicate it. All right, now that it's duplicated, I like to have a bit of an edge on the outside of my Melm Melms. So we're gonna hit this here. This is a border effect that comes with Clip Studio. I'm gonna put it at 20. 20 is usually the border that I like to put on there, so that's good. And the reason why I have you duplicate this is actually because the next part that we're gonna be working with is an overlay. I'm going to select our base from before. This does not have the border effect on it. This is important for this to work. You're going to make a new layer. You're going to clip this layer to the group that does not have the border. I'm going to turn it on to a screening. I'm going to use pink just because I love pink. And I'm going to give some highlights up here and a low light down here. You can also turn this down for less of a extreme effect. You can also use different things like glow dodge or any other preferred filters that you like. For me, I usually just stick with screen. Sometimes add glow is also my favorite. But either or works, whatever your preference provides. And I think we're pretty much done. You can also do other effects that I can show you real quick. Let's see. So this is usually where I would stop with this. I also am not a huge fan of how this little shiny is moving. So I think I'm gonna show you how to adjust that real quick. So we're gonna go to eye shine. I'm gonna turn on my onion layer. Now be warned, when you have a color like white, it's not going to show the actual green and blue as your other onion layers would show. It's only when you have a darker color that you would see that. So I'm just going to bring it closer to the original spot that it's in. I'm going to try to mimic what we have on the other side there. Which they are rather close, but the effect was making it look a bit more extreme because of how the color on the eye is moving. So in this case, it might be better to follow that than to follow the other one. Let's turn off onion and see how that looks. Okay, stayed there pretty well. And it stayed there pretty well too. Let's go and see if that made a difference. I think it kind of simmered that down a bit, which I do enjoy. You can go back and adjust all you'd like. Let's say, for example, layer 2 here. The squash is a little too much for the eyes here, so I could either adjust the full body or the eye set if I want to. We're gonna try the eye set in this case. So it looks like the base eyes is what's not quite matching at this time. I'm gonna squish that in and squish that in. All right, it looks like it's wiggling just a bit less, so that's perfect. You can go ahead and adjust anything that you'd like afterwards, and you'll still have your layers. Most of the time you don't delete your layers or have them merged in any way, so you have the option to be flexible, which is really nice. All right, our next step is gonna be for exporting. To get started, let's go ahead and see what our options are. We want to make a GIF for this, so we're going to go to File and Animation, Export Animation. You're going to go to Animated GIF. And then your file is going to pop up in your computer files. You're just going to rename it however you like. I'm going to name mine Melm Melm Arkomi Kitty. And save that. Now, if you really do want a transparent background, there is a way to do so. So we're gonna cover that next. What you're gonna wanna do once your GIF is done exporting is we're going to export an image sequence instead. Perfect. All right. So you're going to hide your paper layer. You're gonna go to File, and then you'll export animation, but this time you want image sequence. It's gonna give you the option here to name the file. So I'm gonna call it Melm Melm Arkomi Kitty. Oh, I typed too fast, and I'm dyslexic. And I already have it set to a certain spot in my files, but I'm gonna make a new one just in case. I'm gonna put it in my folder and name it Arkomi Kitty. And what this does is it exports every single frame that you have in this animation. So frames to export, 1 to 32. We have 32 and the frame rate is 30. The frame rate will not be exported with these PNGs. You could also change them from PNGs to something else if you do prefer. In my case, I prefer PNG, so I don't need that. But you have a bunch of options with Clip Studio. So we'll go ahead and export those. The next step, you can do this with any program online essentially, but my favorite to use with this problem, I should say. With this issue, I like to use gifmaker.me. So let me go ahead and bring us there. All right, here we are. It's gifmaker.me. Now we're gonna go ahead and, all right, so we've uploaded our files. They're gonna take a little bit of time to actually process for your preview. There's mine there. You'll notice it's extremely slow. So you're gonna go to the milliseconds here. This is actually frame rate. So as you remember, our frame rate was 30 for our animation, and now it's the exact frame rate that we needed. So when it comes to the actual GIFs, or just if you're using this for emotes, you want to make sure that it's a perfect square, or else many of your programs will not take this. Once you're done with your settings, you're going to hit Create GIF. Once it's finished, you'll get all of these options, including to view your GIF as a profile right here. So you can preview it, and then you can also just download it as well. You can also resize your GIF if you'd like to. Most of the time, the images will be degraded a little bit because you're resizing. So if you see some pixelation, just know that it will be there. However, when it comes to uploading GIFs for emotes, usually just because they're a lot smaller once they're uploaded, the quality won't really go down when it's further away. So you'll lose it if you're really close in, but once it's actually uploaded as a emote, it doesn't look as bad as you would first think. So just keep that in mind. All right, I think we're actually finished our tutorial for today. So I thank you for watching, and let's get to the outro for today. And there you have it. Again, these skills can be applied to any animation that you finish or whatever you have an idea for, especially if you're just learning Clip Studio or any other program. You can apply these skills to that set that you have access to. This was my first tutorial, so please let me know how I did in the comments below. And if you have any art or Clip Studio questions or tutorials you'd like me to dive into for the future, don't hesitate to ask. I hope to see you wander the realm again soon, and I'll see you in the clearing. Bye-bye!